Thank you, team. Good afternoon to all of you. First of all, congratulations on the phenomenal work that you've all done. It really falls within those buzzwords that we're hearing a lot these days: transformation, game changer, and that's what I know they're looking for at the UN 2023 conference next year. So we should really aspire to having all these messages and all this information feed into what is supposed to be the game-changing event for the water sector moving forward. I think a lot of you have addressed a number of issues, but I did want to stress on a number of key points that have been mentioned in your presentations, but that we really need to take forward. You have completed the research, and now we want to move to action. And the first one is really law. Law is key. Law is key. Law is how we know that governments are keeping their promises and their commitments to people, how they've been defined, how realizable are they, how do governments speak to access to water and sanitation. So this is really something critical and something that is gaining quite a bit of momentum. Recently, there was a report that was launched that looked at the right to water and sanitation and legislation generally in West Africa Francophone, and the results were not great. We have made a lot of assumptions, first of all, in the environment we're working in. Yes, you might have it in the constitution, the right to water, but sanitation may not be there. You don't have it in the constitution, but you implicitly have it in a text, or it is put under something like well-being, and that is supposed to speak to water and sanitation. So I know a lot of you have mentioned in terms of legally institutionalizing some of your initiatives. And actually to get there, you're going to have to really look at the issue of law. Whether at the regulatory level, whether even at the accountability level. In Kenya, I know, I'm not sure the Kenyans here can confirm that I don't think that the public participation bill has been passed yet or has been made into an act. And that was really critical in terms of how civil society actually engages with the state, but also in terms of how we bring the most marginalized to the table and to have them heard. So moving forward, using this research would be really important in terms of developing the texts that are actually required to ensure that government can be held accountable and how we hold them accountable when it comes to the issue of access to water and sanitation. Another area is trust. All too often we do hear in the sector that we work in silos. And I think this is just really across the board, whatever sector we're looking at. And it is really important that more is done in terms of the coordination, because coordination and equally requires resources, but also in terms of bringing these various parties to the table and building trust, not only between the various ministries, the various departments, the various duty bearers, but also increasing trust between the people and the state. And this is where really increasing accountability, using multi-stakeholder platforms to engage, but also the oversight role that we play as civil society organizations. In terms of accountability, the third area, and I know in the last presentation it was mentioned for donors, but I'm assuming this is development partners, is equally our inward accountability. We cannot be pointing the finger to government when we ourselves are actually not reporting. We ourselves are not exactly disclosing how much we have invested in the sector, where we have invested it, and the kind of work that we have been doing. So this research should inform, to a certain extent, the revival of annual water sector and sanitation reviews, the revival of GSRs, but also ensuring that the information is put out. And why? Why is this so important? Because we have seen in countries where civil society organizations, or let me say non-state partners, actors, actually reported, it increased not only their legitimacy within that country. In fact, there were no longer apprehensive about whether they were going to receive an invitation or not by the government to come and input on whatever policy, text, or initiative. The invitation was actually sent out when they saw that development partners were contributing nearly 30% towards budget. So I think it's really important that we start looking in terms of how we're reporting as well, how we, what is our accountability from an inner perspective, and this as well with the people, the trust that we have with the people. The question is, has this research been restituted to the people? Because we hear a bit too often research fatigue. What has been done? Have we gone back to the people to tell them that this is what we've done with the work, and this is, we came, we took information, we heard your voices, but what next? So this is something that we must be thinking about. UN 2023, which is coming along, the commitments that are going to be made, and how we monitor them. I think this is really important that we start thinking about it, and how does this research actually feed into the messages that will be going. On our end, we are hoping to convene all of you to contribute to the African Heads of State Summit report. So this is something that we're working with closely with AMCAO to see how we're going to do it, probably virtual and probably have face-to-face, likely in, most likely in Addis. There's a new program, which is known as the Africa Investment Program, which is currently having a webinar right now, which is looking at, you know, how do we bring $30 billion by 2030 into the sector? And they conducted a number of scorecards, which I think our research can really feed into that, because we have been requested to bring our data and our information in terms of strengthening and analyzing and assessing and showing them where the blind spots are. These scorecards were done, and it was using a traffic light system. And all the countries, most of them actually scored red, guess where? In terms of gender, in terms of accountability, in terms of budget tracking. So I believe our capacities are adequate enough to now start plugging these kind of research, plugging our skill set, plugging our constituencies and our networks in these much bigger type of initiatives that are taking place at the continental level. Not only that, but also the Fair Water Footprint initiative. Finally, my parting words to you is you need to pay attention to the language that government is using. And this comes back to the issues of policies, of laws, of how the sector is set up. It's really critical that you look at it, because we learned recently that what is out there may not necessarily be how the government may project something, is not exactly what you will find in the text and how you will find it on the ground. So moving forward, I think those are some of the quick contributions I wanted to make. And again, congratulations. And yes, we'll get there, one research at a time. Thank you, Tim.